Thank you so much for including me as a speaker at the 2021 Festival of Road Safety. Among the many surveys published on driver safety, one prepared for the cooperative insurance company stood out. It reported a third of 2,000 drivers questioned felt that their lessons hadn't really prepared them sufficiently to drive on their own. 24% of them believing an accident could have been prevented with more training. My name is Mike Knight, and my working career involved me in many aspects of motorsport. Began in 1961, aged 18, where I was lucky enough to start racing myself. And by 24, I was even more fortunate to be running my own race driver training schools. The first opened in 1963, the second in 1973, and they were sold in 1998. So 35 years instruction experience, focusing mainly on keeping young people with the speed gene as safe as was practical. In the 1960s, 70s, 80s, and 90s especially, with its increased exposure, the whole sport had to come to grips with the dangers that accompanied it. Learning at a race school how to go about it as a driver then was a very natural and logical thing to do, and many hundreds of us did just that. When our school opened, it differed from the others in one important way. It was the first to offer a potentially life-changing prize drive to the year's best pupil. Being the first, we had to learn very quickly how to handle people safely. And when we opened our second school, we had 2 such opportunities to offer each year. And we became a bit of an institution, in fact, and it attracted young people from all over the world, and some went on to be very famous. Those early days were stressful, though, as we quickly discovered how desperate many hundreds of young people hoping to win these prizes could become. And I'm speaking to you now, in part, thanks to the encouragement of the now president of the FIA, Jean Todt, who, as one of those young hopefuls all those years ago, heard about the motion sensor I've developed aimed at road driver safety and asked me to reach out to those who, like his organization, are deeply concerned about the truly stupefying number of drivers around the world, especially the young, who are involved in fatal accidents. Over 1.3 million. That is an awful lot of if-onlys. So driving a car well, in inverted commas, what does that mean to you? To us, at the race schools, it meant insisting on generating vehicle stability or balance at every stage of the course. Without vehicle stability, they were, and road drivers too, to a greater or lesser degree, an accident waiting to happen. So insufficient stability, balance, no progress to the next level. It was as simple as that. Those who didn't complete the course didn't qualify to enter for the prize. The discipline was rigidly imposed, enforced by the imposition of gently increasing rev limits. Over the years, things evolved, and we gradually appreciated how counterintuitive the generation of vehicle stability was for most people, because it actually centers on how brakes are used. They naturally induce wave shift, as well as slowing the car. Immediately they are applied. Once drivers appreciated this was a key to making the checkered flag, and as high up the order as their talent would allow, it largely controlled their progress. It was doubtless the most valuable skill they acquired. So when the FIA published how many young road drivers were involved in serious accidents, it was logical for us to think about whether what we knew might help address it. In fact, this has actually struck me very forcibly in 1993, after our family had been exposed to the fallout of a fatal accident that involved a 19-year-old girl, the best friend of my daughter, the passenger of a young man who made a mistake. 10 or so years later, I found myself with some time to work on what has finally become the device I call the sixth sense gauge. And now I ask the same question. How do you define a successful road driver? The simple answer must be one who arrives at the destination stress and risk-free. That's it. How is it best achieved? A good attitude plays a large part. Basic instruction that includes an appreciation of dynamics that accompany speed is highly desirable. An appreciation that the public roads are just that, shared spaces. We are privileged to use them. It's not our right to use them. Rights of way are something everyone is allowed to walk along by law. Driving is risky because with speed of any description, there is always an element of risk. A car weighing 1,500 kilos at rest weighs half that amount more when its speed generates half a G in a corner. Should it come to a sudden stop, even at 30 miles an hour, it's going to cause a lot of damage. Even its occupant, weighing 75 kilos, becomes a 1-ton plus object. Now here's the problem. 17-year-olds qualify to use the public roads. The medical profession points out that 17-year-old brains require a further 8 years to fully develop the ability to properly assess risk. The logic must be to tap into that younger brain's ability to absorb good information quickly. Leaving too much to trial and error is not a good way to operate. And so we have come up with a motorsport-inspired approach adapted to road driver risk management, the Sixth Sense Gauge. It's an adjustable motion sensor. It's our road driver equivalent learning control device to the race school rev limits we impose, as I mentioned earlier. The motion sensor, aimed to promote smooth driving, was invented, if that's the right word, in the 1970s by the outstanding motorsport safety campaigner of the time, 3 times Formula One world champion Sir Jackie Stewart, along with the Ford Motor Company. It was a very famous initiative. They attached a dish to the car's bonnet into which they placed a ball, and the aim was to drive without dislodging the ball. Very few, if any, match Sir Jackie's skills. Modern electronics allows us to improve this ball dish in 3 ways. Our Sixth Sense Gauge has variable sensitivity settings. Importantly, it senses and displays 2 forces simultaneously, and of course there can be no lost ball. It is thus extremely instructor and driver friendly. It alerts with lights, but bleeps when a set lateral G-force, i.e. roll, is breached. This helps the driver develop a feel or a sense for what is sensible, develop an ability to anticipate, plan, and think. The great value to drivers feeling or sensing their way is, just like the ball in a dish, it provides all feedback in real time. A driver who appreciates how his or her inputs affects the way the car behaves is inherently well equipped to drive. Using it in tandem with the often obligatory insurance black box recorder really ought to benefit both driver and insurance company. The use of a Sixth Sense Gauge is thus valuable for driving instructors, drivers, insurance companies, insurance premium payers, and society at large. It might also appeal strongly to some parents of newly qualified drivers. A reduction in accident levels will save police, ambulance and fire service, the medical and legal profession, many hours of often very disturbing work. The prototype to this product is currently used by a number of ADIs, and indeed for more than 3 years by those at the Newbury Ambulance Driver Training Center. And just this morning we received an order from the chief instructor at the Seattle Fire Department in the United States. The Sixth Sense Gauge is its refinement, user-friendly and with the potential to make a difference to people's lives. An electronic passenger, if you will. Details of how to order are on our website. Thank you very much for listening, and I do appreciate the opportunity to bring the product to your attention.